Good evening. Runaway horses have bolted through London again after losing their riders and charging through rush hour traffic. Dashcam footage showed the moment one of the animals crashed into a taxi. This time there were no serious injuries, but it of course comes just months after 5 other horses from the Household Cavalry tore through the capital. So how could it happen again? Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
For the second time in 10 weeks, London's streets echo to the sound of galloping hooves as 3 army horses bolted through Belgravia. One of the runaways was caught, but the other 2 charged across a junction in Pimlico into the path of a taxi.
I heard 2 horses galloping down the road. I thought, oh, they're riding a bit fast, the horsemen. Came out, two horses, no horsemen. Just trudging down this area here. One of them hit the cab, a black cab, I think, coming this way. And then they went scarpering, the horses went scarpering left down Looper Street.
The 2 horses were finally rounded up on Vauxhall Bridge, 2.5 miles from where they broke free. They were among 6 horses being exercised from Knightsbridge Barracks, the home of the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. The army said the first horse to bolt was being led by a soldier on another horse when it was spooked by a London bus. 2 further horses also broke free after unseating their riders. In April, 5 cavalry horses bolted after being scared by the sound of rubble being dropped into a skip on a building site. One of them crashed into a people carrier in Victoria, another hit the front of a tourist bus. The army later released pictures of the 2 horses with the worst injuries recovering in the countryside.
These horses are quite well trained, but however much preparation you do, you can't prepare for every single situation that might happen in a city. And also, to get trained, you have to go through the training and you have to expose them to different situations. I don't know how well trained these horses were, but they could have been a horse in training.
The army said one of the horses which bolted today was slightly injured but didn't need treatment, and none of the soldiers were hurt. Simon Harris, ITV News, Pimlico.
Now, for the last 50 years, one thing has never changed in Chipping Barnet. The North London constituency has only had a Conservative MP. But if the polls are right, that political loyalty could be put to the test. Out of all the issues likely to sway voters is housing, in particular where new homes should be built and what impact that might have on a greenbelt land. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
It's where city and countryside collide, and for almost 150 years, the rural green belt around urban London has been protected. But Labour wants to review the planning rules to kickstart a massive house building programme. And Chipping Barnet in North London is a constituency on the front line. What's more important to you, building new homes or protecting the green belt?
For me, protecting the green belt.
I'm really passionate about the green countryside, but I do realise that young people need new homes.
What's more important to you, protecting the green belt or building more homes?
Protecting the green belt, because I've got a home, but I might not think that if I was saving up for one.
What's more important to you, building more homes or protecting the green belt?
Building more homes, because there's so much green belt and a lot of it's just grass.
If you get rid of all of it, then you won't have that green space anymore. I think it's quite important, yeah.
The Conservative candidate, Theresa Villas, took me to a field close to the town centre where the Labour Council has approved more than 100 new homes.
I fear that that's just the start of things. If a Labour government's elected, they have been very clear that they will start building on the green belt, and we'll see many more spaces like this going under the bulldozer, which I think would be a sad day for Barnet and for London as a whole.
Is the green belt here under threat if Labour wins power?
Our green spaces and the beautiful green belt here in this constituency is something that I will always fight for and protect, and I'll make sure that we invest in our green spaces and make them even better for people who live in this part of London, working with our Labour Council, which is doing so much to enhance and improve the borough.
The Lib Dems say building on the green belt isn't the answer to the housing shortage. The Greens say they're also committed to protecting the green belt, while Reform would fast-track planning for brownfield sites. In the 50-year history of this seat, Chipping Barnet has only had 3 MPs, all of them Conservative. At the last election, Theresa Villas won with a majority of 1,200. But in 2022, Labour took control of Barnet Council and now has Chipping Barnet in its sights. Theresa Villas has been the MP here since 2005. But if the polls are right, she's facing the fight of her political career. Simon Harris, ITV News, Barnet.
And there are 7 candidates standing for election in the constituency of Chipping Barnet. Their names are on the screen now. Simon, let's move on to the Reform Party because they had some unwelcome news today.
Yes, after that initial surge in the opinion polls, Reform UK's leaders might have been wondering where their campaign's been going, not as smoothly as they'd hoped. Last week, undercover journalists recorded an apparent Reform UK supporter making racist and Islamophobic comments. Well, today, the party's candidate in the East End seat of West Ham and Beckton, Georgie David, pulled out of the contest. She's no longer a candidate, accusing the party's leaders of not tackling the issue. Georgie David is now backing the Conservatives. Well, this was the response of Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage.
I came into this job a month ago. 600 candidates had been picked by an organisation that had no money, no resources, and was frankly begging for people to put names forward. I did try at the last minute to get a professional London vetting company involved. I paid them a load of money. They didn't do the job. So look, I apologise. We've had some bad apples.
Georgie David said she didn't think Reform UK's leaders were racist, but she had concern about their candidates, her fellow candidates. Reform UK said her comments were sweeping and she couldn't possibly know the vast majority of the 600-plus candidates. And anyway, Georgie David was a last-minute addition to their list of candidates.
OK, Simon, thanks very much.
Good evening. With just hours left until voters head to the polls, the Minister for London has denied the Tories have given up on London. Over the last 6 weeks, Rishi Sunak has campaigned in more than 50 different constituencies, but just 6 of those have been in the capital. Pollsters say both the Conservatives and Labour have assumed it is a foregone conclusion that Keir Starmer will perform well here tomorrow. But waiting in the wings, and not quietly, are the Liberal Democrats who have focused their campaign on the so-called blue wall seats in the home counties. Our political correspondent Simon Harris now on the party's final drive to win your vote.
The king of the stunts ended his campaign where it began. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey and his deputy Daisy Cooper were back in the Hertfordshire town of Harpenden. His advisers described this latest photo opportunity as an homage to Thunderbirds, the 1960s puppet show.
I've travelled the entire length of the United Kingdom, from John O'Groats to Land's End, driven 6,000 miles in yellow Hammer 1. Visited 50 constituencies.
But only 4 of them in London. Sir Keir Starmer's most recent campaign visit in London was for a rally in Westminster on Saturday. Rishi Sunak held a rally in Chelsea last night, although he managed a brief campaign visit to a South London constituency this morning. Following boundary changes, London now has 75 parliamentary constituencies. But during this election, only 16 of them had a visit from any of the 3 main party leaders. The Prime Minister limited his London campaign visits to just 6 constituencies.
I think for the Conservatives now, their machinery, the number of members, their capacity to fight elections has been somewhat eroded. And as a result of that, they almost give the impression sometimes as if they've given up on London.
Have the Conservatives given up on London?
No, not at all. The Conservatives are fighting for every seat in London that we already hold, and also going for 1 or 2 other seats as well, which we don't currently hold, but where the boundary change is quite favourable to us. So we are very competitive in London. We've got lots of teams of campaigners, canvassers out in key seats across London as we speak.
The Labour leader has visited more London seats than the Prime Minister, but still only 9 out of the 75.
There is no sense in which the Labour Party, a changed Labour Party, is taking anything for granted. We are fighting for every vote. And I think what is so important is to tackle potential complacency. Labour has not won this election yet.
Reform UK's leader came to London to announce he was standing as a candidate in Essex, but concedes his party is not strong in the capital.
We haven't spent much time in London, you're right. London is one of our weaker areas. However, it was quite interesting that JL Partners polling said we had doubled the level of support in London over the course of the campaign.
The London election proved that Labour is going to wipe the floor at this election, and they've taken Londoners for granted. So send them a signal and vote Green at this election.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you very much.
The surprise finale in the Conservative campaign was an appearance at last night's rally by Boris Johnson. The former Prime Minister and London Mayor has kept a low profile for most of the last 6 weeks.
Simon, is it fair to say it feels like there's not a lot of jeopardy in some of the London races?
At the risk of stating the obvious, this election isn't over until the polls close tomorrow night. So whatever the opinion polls have said in recent weeks, it's impossible to predict with 100% certainty what the final results will be. There is an expectation that a lot more of London will turn red. All eyes will be on the 21 seats won by the Conservatives last time to see how many of those change to the Labour Party or are taken by the Liberal Democrats. Now, ITV News will be on air throughout the night with the results, and online we've got an interactive map where you can click on any constituency in London and the home counties to find out the results as they come in. Just go to itv.com/London.
OK, Simon, thank you very much. So there we are. You can have that interactive map on your phone or tablet on your lap. And as Simon mentioned, you can watch the results come in here on ITV. Tom and Anushka have a look ahead now.
Good afternoon. What a night. Many had predicted Labour's election landslide, but few had any idea just how seismic it would be. The Conservatives are still reeling from the battering and are still assessing the implications of the wounds. Heartland Tory seats in London and the home counties turned red, some for the first time ever. Although the result puts Sir Keir Starmer in a good position here, the win may not be as spectacular as it appears. Despite his victory, he lost 10,000 votes. The Tories held on to some key seats and the Lib Dems made significant gains. OK, let's take a look. The 2019 election results, adjusted for the new constituency boundaries, had the Conservatives on 58 seats, Labour on 52 and the Lib Dems with 4. So how did that change last night? Well, Labour won 72 seats, Tories only picked up 24, 16 went to the Lib Dems, and Jeremy Corbyn, of course, won as an independent after being ousted from the Labour Party. Well, our political correspondent Simon Harris now has the biggest moments of the night and what it means for us.
So the opinion polls were right all along. Sir Keir Starmer arrived in Downing Street with a landslide victory behind him, the weight of expectation on his shoulders and daunting challenges in front of him.
Changing a country is not like flicking a switch. The world is now a more volatile place. This will take a while.
Earlier, the Labour leader went to Buckingham Palace, where the King now has a Labour MP for the first time. When the votes were counted in the cities of London and Westminster, this trophy seat was about to change hands.
Labour and Cooperative Party, 15,000.
I'm feeling quite tired and really happy to have been able to deliver this win.
But Starmer didn't have it all his own way.
Jeremy Bernard Corbyn, Independent, 24,000.
Jeremy Corbyn, blocked from standing as a Labour candidate, held on to his seat in Islington North.
This result is, to me, a resounding message from the people of Islington North that they want something different, they want something better.
This has been an incredible community effort.
Faiza Shaheen, another left-winger banned from standing for Labour, ran instead as an independent and split the Labour vote. It allowed one-time Tory leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith to hang on to Chingford and Woodford Green. And Diane Abbott, who at one time also appeared to be on Labour's banned list, was re-elected in Hackney.
We are here on the morning of a historic Labour victory. And I believe we will all remember where we were this morning.
Big beasts were always vulnerable in the cull of Conservative MPs, and in Welwyn Hatfield, the Defence Secretary was one of the first senior Tories to be toppled.
What is crystal clear to me tonight is that it's not so much that Labour won this election, but rather that the Conservatives have lost it.
Danny Beales, please.
In Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Labour's Danny Beales beat the Conservative who beat him in a by-election 11 months ago.
It's the most painful thing I've ever experienced, if I'm honest. But, you know, I never expected to be the Member of Parliament for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, and I've had an amazing 10 or 11 months representing the people where I live.
The Tory wipeout in the capital wasn't as total as some opinion polls predicted, but the Conservative Party now has just 9 London MPs. Labour has 59. In the surreal setting of the RAF Museum, they counted the votes under the wings of a huge plane. Labour took all 3 seats here from the Tories, chipping Barnet, Finchley and Golders Green and Hendon, where the winner had the tiniest majority, just 15 votes.
We always knew it would be close here, and that's why we've knocked on doors year in, year out, in the rain and shine, listening to people, helping with their concerns.
The Liberal Democrats also took seats from the Conservatives, 3 of them in London, Carshalton and Wallington, Sutton and Cheam and Wimbledon. They also won over more voters in Surrey and Hertfordshire.
These are people who are internationalists, they're environmentalists, they're pro-business, and fundamentally they're absolutely sick to the back teeth of the fact that their health and social care systems have been driven into the ground. And when they look to the Liberal Democrats, they see that we're talking about their priorities.
Thank you very much.
The last London MP to walk into Downing Street as newly elected Prime Minister was forced to resign in disgrace. Boris Johnson's downfall set in motion a train of events which led to today's Labour landslide. Simon Harris, ITV News, Westminster.
Correspondent Simon Harris joins us now. It's all over the shop today because of the protested Simon. So what do all these changes mean for London, do you think?
Well, I think one of the most interesting ones is what's going to happen, as you were talking with Tony Travis, that relationship between Sadiq Khan and the new government. The Mayor now has to make good on some election promises which he said would be possible with a Labour government. Will he now get the money he demanded from the last government to build all the homes he thinks London needs? Will he persuade the new government to give him money for things like the Bakerloo Line extension and Crossrail 2? Will he persuade the new government to create a long-term funding deal for Transport for London? Put that aside for a moment. I think it's worth pausing to reflect on the seismic nature of the changes to the political map today, and particularly here in London. If you recall, there are 75 MPs in London now. Just 9 of them are Conservatives. The rest, almost all of them, 59 of them, are Labour, 6 Lib Dems. Think back to 14 years, and the Conservatives had something like 28 MPs in London, now just 9.
It's all very, very different, Simon, isn't it? Thank you very, very much.